Hello and welcome back to the Tea and a Butty podcast. I'm Dominic.
And I'm Erica.
And today's episode, well, it's a little bit of a strange one. It's, what would the USA be like if the UK didn't exist? Your starter for 10. And I mean, you might be thinking, well, what do you mean by that? What would the USA... Because would the USA exist?
Yeah.
Or would the USA not exist? Would there be a United States of America? Would there be something else?
Yeah.
It's a very kind of philosophical question.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're basing it on a Quora article. Because I thought, that's an interesting question.
It's so interesting to think about, isn't it? You know?
Yeah, because there's a lot of, like...
I mean, obviously it would still exist.
Well, I mean, obviously...
Because it was a place before the UK.
It was a place before the UK. America was, anyway. But it might not have been called America, you know?
Oh, well, yeah.
You know?
Well, it's called America. Let's see. Oh, you know... Got to take me back to history class.
Take you way back. Why is it called America?
It's called America,
Erica?
I think, because of Amerigo Vespucci, right? The explorer. So he didn't have anything to do with the UK. So
I mean, because a lot of they say the Vikings found America before. I mean, it's people like, you know, from Europe now. You know, they say they found America before the other Europeans found it.
Well, yeah, they found, well...
There's people
America
living over 20,000 years.
America meaning the North American continent.
Yeah, like Canada.
Yeah,
usually,
yes. Yeah, I mean, I don't know, you know, they say it because I think that they've found a Viking boat, you know, I think... They
found some remains, I think, too, didn't they?
Well, some pieces of a boat. So, yeah, there's totally evidence that the Vikings have been over here.
The Vikings have been here.
I think in some, history show at some point that I saw, they thought that before the continent started separating too.
Yeah, Pangaea.
They think that people came over from... I need a map. The map is on the wrong...
The map is behind you.
The map is behind me.
Because I can glance at it where I'm sitting.
I can't easily look at the map and point my voice toward the microphone at the same time. But I think they have said something about the possibility of people coming over from the Asian continent up over the Arctic Circle and down into North America as well. So there's that, you know, at whatever point in history that was. So, yeah, I mean, America would exist. Would it be called America? Maybe.
Maybe it would be called something else.
United States of America, you know.
Yeah.
I don't know that it would be the same as it is.
I mean...
We wouldn't be speaking English, maybe.
No. It would likely be either French or Spanish. If the UK didn't exist, then France, Spain, perhaps even Germany would have, you know, risen up to take the mantle of colonization, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, no, a lot of people, you know, responded. One guy responded, it would be non-existent. The US was born of English law and political philosophy. Pull out the UK and the North American colonies are French or Spanish.
Yeah.
Thus a disaster of corruption and disorder.
Oh, jeez.
Think a cycle of revolt and repression on a much larger scale than happened with the UK in the mix. Sadly, as bad as British rule could be, it wasn't as bad as it could get.
I don't know. You know, some people hate this kind of thing, like this kind of philosophical thinking, because it's like, well, it doesn't matter because it does exist and it didn't happen this way. And it's like, no, I think it's interesting to think about things. Just think about things in general.
Just think about things like our cat does, like Holly. Yeah,
just sitting and thinking about life.
Well, yeah, I mean, she's not right now; she's asleep. But she, you know, sometimes we catch her and she's thinking about life. You know, she's got that look on her face and she's mulling over some philosophical question.
Yeah, she's like, where would I be if I hadn't have fallen out of that car that time?
Why am I a cat? Why do I have to walk around on 4 legs?
Yes.
It's when all these other people walk around on 2.
Yes.
Why am I full of fur? Why do I hack up fur balls?
Why can't I have some of that cereal that Erica eats in the morning?
Yes! I think I will, actually. I think I'll just go and eat some now. But yeah, it's just these philosophical questions, you know. But yes.
It definitely would be French or Spanish.
French or Spanish.
Well, I say definitely. Like, how do we know? If the UK didn't exist, maybe one of the other countries would have, like, risen up and had a big empire. You know what I mean?
Like France or Spain?
Well, no, just anywhere else.
I mean, I don't know. Yeah, maybe.
Anywhere that the UK colonized, you know, like, I don't know, you know, it's like, it's a really big kind of thought.
Because France and Spain were big colonizers too. You've got to remember this in history. People go, oh, the UK, the British, they were the bad guys, they colonized everywhere. It's like, yes, they were the top colonizers.
Yeah.
In the colonizing competition of the world.
Yeah.
But I think Spain and then France has, you know, it goes like that, you know, it goes Britain, Spain, then France, because Spain colonized pretty much all of South America.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Spain
and the British never even really got a foothold in there. It was just kind of, I mean, this is turning into a colonization chat now. They never, I think it was just one little bit, but it just goes to show you that where the British were colonizing. Yeah. It was kind of like, oh, temperate, mild climate, the 13 colonies up in the northeast. You know, I mean, oh, we'll have some nice.
Can't hack it down where it's hot.
Yeah, even because I mean, you'd say that, but the Caribbean, there was a lot of Caribbean British islands. Yeah. But I think that was more to do with the fact that
in Africa, I mean.
But Africa I guess so. On, you know, the very south of Africa where, you know, I guess the
and
weather.
India.
India, yeah, that's true.
No, but yeah, the Spanish obviously had, Mexico, which was a large portion of of what is now the United States.
Yeah.
So yeah, but let's think about, like, okay, let's forget about Spain and France even coming over here that early on. Let's say all the way up till World War II, you know, the North American continent and South American continent were just left untouched, let's say. Yeah. Somehow. You know, somehow it happened that everybody was just like,
no one had come over, and, you know, they'd let everyone who was indigenous to the US just kind of grow up and, you know, and grow and do whatever, you know, yeah.
I don't think if that had happened, we would have been bothered getting involved in World War II. No. So, without the UK fighting...
there may not even have been a World War II without the UK.
Well, maybe there would have been, and maybe Hitler would have taken over everything he intended to take over and come over here, and maybe we would be all speaking German right now, you know? Yes. I mean, it's like, just there's any number of things that could have happened.
Any number of things that could have happened, yes. Yeah. I mean, people think, oh, you'd be like Canada, because the French, I suppose, got a good portion of Canada too. Yeah. Speaking French.
It's like France and Britain split up Canada, didn't they? They just like split it in half. You take this side and we'll take the other side, you know?
Yeah, because I think I don't know. I mean, that's for the history books, you know, to decide, you know, really.
We're not historians here. No. This isn't history, a history podcast.
People who would just say, oh, if the UK never existed, neither would the US. And, you know, that would be true to an extent, like to the days. What happened is like, you know, the crown, you know, the 13 colonies started the United States of America. Yeah. Mm-hmm. You know? Yes. And I mean, because, you know, Texas wasn't part of the 13 colonies. It was part of Mexico. Right. You know, and it just kind of became its own land, and then the US was like, okay, we'll have you. Yeah. You can become to be, the 45th state?
I think
I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm just saying that just number came to me. It might have been. It was. I mean, the most recent state I think was Hawaii. Wasn't it?
I don't think Texas the 45th state. I don't know.
I don't know. Actually, it might have been the 18th. I don't know. I'm just saying. I'm just I'm spitballing numbers here, people.
But yeah, the colonies started the United States. They got the ball rolling.
Got the ball rolling because most of what's now the U.S. was a Spanish colony.
Yes.
California, New Mexico, Texas.
Yeah.
Minus Florida.
Mm-hmm.
I think Florida was, just there.
And of course you had the areas of land where all the natives were pushed out to.
Well, yes.
Ugh. This is kind of a depressing topic, actually.
It's a topic
because you just think, because, if it weren't for the British, this might be a country full of just beautiful native people. You know what I mean? Like,
well, I mean, not to like stick up for the British, but it was the Spanish too.
Well,
the Spanish came and did stuff too.
Yeah.
The conquistadors.
Definitely, yeah. It's funny because when you talk about colonization, a lot of people just think of the British.
It's like, oh yeah,
they forget that the Spanish,
those pesky British, and they did all this, and it's like the Spanish actually were doing quite a lot too.
Yeah, it's
they had a large
the reason they
speak
land. Spanish in Mexico is because of Spain.
Well, yes.
You know what I mean?
Spanish,
like they didn't just randomly speak
so
Spanish.
They decided, oh yeah, we should start speaking Spanish because of Spain.
Yeah. Yeah, but people don't
because
think about
a lot
that.
of a lot of people came from Spain,
mm-hmm.
whereas the British, people were coming over. Like the Pilgrims came over. You know, the Mayflower and all that. Those were largely British ships. They were trying to escape the Civil War.
Yeah.
Because the English Civil War, I guess, they were just like, okay, let's load onto a ship and get out of here because I don't want no part of this.
We want freedom of religion.
It's not going the way we want it to. Let's get out of here. Because they were mostly Puritans who were on the Mayflower,
Yeah. Well, yeah. Yes. Because it was they were fighting over whether or not the country was going to be Catholic, basically, right?
Yes. It was monarchy and, it was monarchy and, government. It was Oliver Cromwell, who was a crazy guy. Mm-hmm. Crazy old Oliver Cromwell. And they won, but I think he got too obsessed with power and stuff, so people were just like, oh, actually, let's get on this boat and go over there. We've heard of a land far away from all this craziness.
Yeah.
Let's go over there. And so Plymouth and the Mayflower and other ships,
Yeah.
And it was kind of like the same sort of thing with Australia. It was like, oh, we've heard rumours of this land. This huge land down south of the equator.
Yeah.
And it's like, that'll be a good place to send all our murderers and, and all our criminals.
Yeah.
We'll just get a couple of ships and we'll take them out there and you can set up a jail up there and that'll be it.
Yeah.
And that show we watched, Banished, that was about the first, transport ships.
Yeah, you were really sad that show got canceled.
Yeah, because it was really good because,
it was interesting.
It was about the first kind of criminals who had taken over there, and some of them hadn't done much other than steal a loaf of bread or commit adultery or something, that was illegal at the time in Britain. But the Royal Navy smuggling, just kind of some of them were crazy murderers and stuff, or thieves or whatever. But they got over there and it was a case of we're just going to hope that other ships come now with supplies for us.
Yeah.
And they were like, there's no other ship coming, we're on our own out here.
Yeah.
And that's how it grew.
It's like,
they kind of pardoned all the criminals and let them build homesteads and stuff. It was like the Wild West.
As interesting as the discussion is about what would America be without the UK if the UK didn't exist, I think it's a little more interesting to think about what would Australia be, because nobody else really ventured down to Australia.
All these exotic animals would be all over the place.
Well, I think it's
the kangaroo, the kookaburra.
To me, it's pretty cut and dry. I think that without the UK, the US would be Spanish.
Probably Spanish, yeah.
Yeah, I think the whole
maybe the 13 colonies would be French, maybe.
Maybe.
And a little bit of Louisiana.
I I don't know. I mean, there wouldn't have been 13 colonies, would there? You know, I think Spain already had a stronghold of the western part of the United States. I think it would have just continued expanding.
Would they have wanted to? Because, you know, a lot of, like, the original settlers from Spain, you know, they colonized all of South America, except for, like, the random Brazil being the largest country speaks Portuguese.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, we'll have to look into the history of that at some point.
Because the history of Portugal, yeah.
Well, no, the history of how Portugal came to
decide that, you know, you're speaking Portuguese in Brazil.
Yeah,
and not Spanish like all these other countries.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
But no, what were you saying? They had most of the South American.
They had most of the South America, but, you know, again, that's kind of like the climate. I'm thinking of a climate thing, you know, like the settlers come over there and they want the same climate that they got back home.
You think these colonizers, they were
on the weather. Yeah, it's too cold up there. We don't want to settle up there. It's too cold.
I think Canada's quite a lot colder than France, though.
Maybe. I don't know.
So I don't know. I mean, yeah, there probably would have been some sort of fight over at least part of the United States between France and
it would probably be split Spain. Down the middle. Texas would be half French, half Spanish right now. The UK.
God, what would we be like though as a country if that were the case? Like, I don't know.
It wouldn't be United States. It'd just be like, you know, with the continents, you know, from Canada to Mexico.
Estados Unidos.
You know, straight down the middle. And it would just be like, one side is Spanish, one side is French.
Yeah. Like Canada with British...
Kind of like Canada, yeah. Because there's still a lot of, like, there would be a lot more... Because in Canada, all the native people were pushed aside. Or they were pushed up into, like, the Inuit and all that. They were pushed up into, like, the remote, the Arctic Circle, remote regions. Because, oh no, this is our house. This is our home now.
Colonizers.
Those colonizers, you know.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like that's how it happens, you know. And unfortunately, and this has turned into a discussion on colonization, you know, because it's like...
Well, you can't really have the discussion without talking about colonization. What would it be like,
you know? Because, I mean, it's...
Because how many places around the world have been left untouched from colonization?
Yeah.
You know?
I suppose not. Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, I'm trying to think of any kind of thing. I mean... China, maybe. Some regions of China.
I guess Russia.
But then again, you know, if you look into that, there's probably like, oh, actually China was invaded in this time, you know, by these people.
Well, there's something, I mean, obviously between the Mongols and the Chinese, because that's the reason for the Wall of China, right? The Great Wall of China,
right?
Yeah,
the Mongolians, yeah. And there's Tibet as well.
Yeah.
There's a Tibetan, you know, things. It's just, you know, because I'm just looking at the political map, you know, because Mongolia's like the buffer between Russia and China.
Yeah.
And, you know, you've got all that kind of stuff going on, and China's huge, you know.
Just thinking
China's about the same size as the US, I think.
Just thinking about the different empires, you know, when you learn about in school, like the Chinese Empire, which is referred to as the China Dynasty, right? Like, the Ottoman Empire, was the Ottoman Empire, that was like, Turkey, right? And
yes, Turkey. Yeah, the Austro-Hungarian Empire.
But then, like way back, you have the Romans, the Greeks. It's always
what were the Romans doing? It's
always
because it's so funny, you know, when you think of Rome used to be a very large empire.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what kind of like, you know...
There you go. They expanded up into the UK. Okay. Maybe couldn't hack it because of the weather. Maybe there goes your weather theory.
I think that was their last kind of expansion. That was like the farthest they'd gone.
Maybe if they hadn't tried for the
Hadrian's
UK, if the UK didn't exist, they hadn't tried, okay, let's go way, way, way back. The UK never existed, so the Romans didn't...
Someone did that.
So the Romans didn't have to worry about going up into the UK. So they were able to just spread throughout what is now Europe. You know, they became the, you know, so there was no Spain, there was no France. It's all just the Roman Empire, you know. Maybe we'd all be speaking Italian then in the United States.
Or Latin it would have been back in the Roman times.
Yeah.
Because I mean, Italian grew out of that and everything.
I mean, without the UK existing, that's a possibility, isn't it?
Yeah.
That they just held on to power all those years.
All those years of power. I mean, I think the UK was probably the start of the end of the Roman Empire when they
maybe
because you know they had to pull out.
Well, it seems when any of these empires tried to expand too much, it's kind of like just to like dumb it down quite a lot. Like, you're always talking about these chains, you know, these chain restaurants, right?
And then they go out of business.
Yes! They try to expand too much, too quickly, and they just can't do it. They can't manage it for some reason. It happens all the time.
The reach exceeds
and they
their
just
grasp.
go out of business then, because it's just like, oh, they've lost too much money, I guess.
Yeah.
Expanding.
Well, yeah, that's what it is. They've expanded too quickly because, there's a buzz about them, you know, and everyone's loving it, but everyone's like, you know, the old joke of like, oh, the last days of Rome, everyone's drinking and you know, and that's what it was. It was like there was no one, you know, holding the purse strings, really, you know, when Rome expanded into the UK. I mean, and you know, thankfully they did, because you know we didn't have roads and stuff. We you know, in the UK they didn't know how to.
You heathen British people.
No, it's funny because, you know, it's like that old Monty Python joke of what did the Romans ever do for us? It's like, well, the plumbing, and then the roads.
Yeah.
You know, and
currency.
And all that kind of stuff, you know, they kind of like, they had it going. But then they pulled out, you know, the empire collapsed and they pulled out. And it seems like, you know, it's a funny thing. It seems like everybody who was there was just like, whoever took over, you know, the UK, or the England as it was then, you know, and you know, because Scotland was out of it, and I mean England and Wales were kind of thing. They just kind of forgotten how to do everything, you know, or they just said, well, we'll bugger all that Roman plumbing and stuff. We're going to go back to how it was in the old days.
Yeah, well, that's the Dark Ages.
The Dark Ages, yes, the Dark Ages.
Yeah,
which is, you know, which is what you'd argue that certain politicians want you know, countries to return to the good old days. Don't you remember them? You know, it's just like, well, no, progress is progress, you know. But yeah, there's a question of that, you know, it's like, what would happen if the US didn't exist? Everybody asks that question, you know.
Yeah.
And so the thing, it's like, oh, if the British won the American Revolution and, you know, punished the colonies for their insolence.
Okay.
You know, and it's just like, the British would have kept on trying to make the world British, which they still do now, you know. That's why I'm over here. I'm trying to make you all British. It's just like they're still trying to do, you know. And it's kind of like, you know, the joke of like the fallen empire and all this kind of stuff, you know. It's like the fall of Rome.
Yeah.
And it's so funny that Rome just kind of turned into Italy, and it turned into this little city, and then that was it. You know?
Yeah.
And it's like there's Roman ruins they're all over the place, really. There's, I mean, you know, like, you know, Spain. My dad jokes, oh, you don't have to go to Rome. It's Roman ruins here. You don't have to go now.
Yeah, when we were in Malaga, we were gonna catch a flight out to Rome, and there just happened to be a little Roman ruins.
A little Roman guy just popped up.
ruins of a little small Roman amphitheater, basically. And, you know, there's a tour, and it's just open to the public. There's kind of like plexiglass, from what I can remember, like kind of keeping
preserving it. keeping people out.
Yeah, and Dominic's dad was like, "Oh, there you go. You don't have to go to Rome now. You've seen it.
You've seen Roman ruins. There you go." And it's funny because you go to Rome and it's just all Roman ruins.
Yeah.
Really,
they're everywhere.
And I mean, you go to London and parts of the UK and there's this. Oh, that's Roman. That is.
Yeah.
When the Romans were here, putting their roads in and making us take baths.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And Hadrian's Wall, that's... It's kind of like... It's...
The Romans built that, didn't they? To keep the heathen Scots out.
Yeah, and it's in Northumberland somewhere, and it's way down from where the actual Scottish border is now.
Yeah.
I think. I mean, that was the original border. They've regressed it a little bit, But yeah, it's not an actual... It's completely crumbled, and there's parts of it missing and everything, but it's still rather there,
Yeah.
All there. But yeah, the US didn't exist, and it would not have developed the way it did. The French took a lot of it,
Yeah.
Because the French, I always used to think, oh, it's the Spanish and the British. Those were the top dogs in colonization.
Yeah.
And when I hear about, the French had most of Louisiana, I'm like, that's weird. Because the Louisiana Purchase, I think the US purchased it from France.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's just,
that's why they speak French and...
Yeah, that's what the French Cajun and all that.
Yeah.
And it's weird because it's like, why did France randomly come over and go, we'll just have this little bit here.
Oh,
Thanks a lot.
There is a story behind it. I don't remember. Somebody let us know. Somebody listening knows.
There's a story. Sure. A Frenchman came over and said, I'm just going to have this whole bit right here.
I can't remember what...
Just leave me alone. Leave me alone. I'm just going to have this little slither of land right here where the swamps are and the alligators and the marshes and the crawfish. There's good crawfish down here. Just leave me alone.
It's interesting because I don't really know the story as to why, and I don't think Germany didn't really they didn't colonize over here, but they came over. They immigrated in large groups, and would set up settlements. So here in Texas, and I don't know about. You'll have to let us know in whatever state you're listening from if the same is true where you live. But here in Texas, there's a lot of towns with German names because they were set up by German population.
New Braunfels, yeah.
Mm-hmm, Fredericksburg, Luckenbach,
Well, even up in the Pennsylvanian Dutch, New York. If you want to look at New York, that was kind of like a mini kind of like US in the colonization type stakes, because they had the Dutch randomly. The Dutch were a big...
well, you just have to watch Gangs of New York, don't you?
Yeah, Gangs of New York, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like when you said your ancestors came over from the Canary Islands.
Yeah.
It was just kind of like we're sending a deputation out. A scouting party, you know, to stake a claim to the new land. That's what a lot of them did. I mean, Italy, Spain, obviously Spain, the king of Spain was like, yeah, get over there, get all these people out there and start paying tax to us. Yeah. I'm presuming that's what happened, but I guess he didn't have enough people to enforce it, and maybe they were just like, nah, we're not paying tax to the king of Spain, we're our own place now.
I guess it was sort of like a version of homesteading.
Yeah.
You send them out there, stake claim on the land, and then, okay, it's ours now.
That's what a lot of the British did. You watch Outlander, it's kind of like, this is a British colony because you're all British. Mm-hmm. And it's like,
And we own it because we
say we do.
Yeah, because we got here and we've lived here now for a few years.
We've built the house here, we've started a community here.
Yeah.
We're playing softball.
Yeah.
It's just like, that's it.
Yeah.
It's our community, and you've got to pay tax now to the crown. Because we're protecting you.
Yes, like the mafia.
Like the mafia, yes.
Yeah.
Send the soldiers or the militia in, and it's like that wasn't going to... I mean, in Britain, yes, that would have worked, because, that's the country, and like the Highland clearances and all that kind of stuff, that was bound to happen at some point, It's like, the Highland way of life is over. The homesteading way of life, largely, like the cowboys and stuff like that, and the Wild West, that largely died out by the late 1890s.
So the question, though, is what would America be like if it wasn't America?
Yeah.
So if there had been no revolution, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess we would just be like Australia.
Maybe. There'd be large swaths of land over here unoccupied.
I don't know.
Because I think in Australia...
the only reason that's the case in Australia is because that land is largely unlivable. Like, there's not any water sources.
There's not a water source.
Nearby.
Yeah, no. I mean, yeah, no. There's, the bush and...
The outback.
Right?
I mean,
yeah.
I assume that's what you're referring to.
Yeah.
I think that's just because the land is unlivable, I think we would just be like Australia. We would just be like resigned to our fate as a
resigned to our fate
as a British. Are they considered a colony still? What are they considered?
No.
What are they considered?
No, they're considered a country.
Well, yeah, but I mean, they're part of the Commonwealth.
The Commonwealth, yes.
Okay.
But there's ongoing discussions as to whether they're going to get rid of that now that Charles is king.
Yeah.
Because I think they said, we were okay with Queen Elizabeth as our head of state, but now she's gone, it's like, you're going to have to bend over backwards or do a backflip.
Yeah.
So
I think us being over here, right, like, we're not going to... It never would have been the case, even if we hadn't had a revolution, that we were going to be governed by... the British government.
No,
because it's just like you can't be
it's
that
untenable.
far. You can't be that. Yeah, you can't be that far away from the head of the government, let's say, and that work. So we would have always had our own government.
I think that's the
but
same
we'd
thing,
just still be under the crown. So we would just essentially be like a second Australia, wouldn't we? Or like Canada, really.
Well, yeah, because Canada's still part of the Commonwealth.
Yeah.
Is
all of Canada, though, or is it just part of Canada?
Yeah, it's all of Canada. No, I think the British purchased most of, like, Montreal and Quebec off the French.
Oh, okay.
They just still speak it up there because there's a long history of,
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Because, there's like, no, I'm French-Canadian, I'm French-Canadian,
Yeah, that's, yeah.
Don't you be lumping me in with those British,
Yeah. That's what, but I mean, the Queen or whoever.
She's still head of state,
she's still on the money.
She's still on the money, yeah. Well, it'll be Charles now, but
yeah. But, like, they have their own government. They have their own government in Australia.
It's a parliamentary system.
Yeah.
Whereas over here, it became like a presidential system.
Yeah. Is it what is it in Canada?
Parliamentary.
Parliamentary?
Justin Trudeau is
and it is
Prime
in
Minister.
Australia as well?
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe we'd have a prime minister then instead of a president. And...
Yeah.
I think that would basically be the only difference, really. I think we'd be
I think it comes from like a lot more people living here in this bit,
What do you mean?
In this bit of the North American continent is because there's a presidential kind of system, it's like the states and they're united by the federal government. Mm. And a lot of advances and money and economy wise and stuff like that,
Yeah.
It's just like whereas Canada, they're mostly on the east, and then there's a little bit on the west,
Yeah.
In the middle, it's dotted around, there's not too much, whereas in the middle of the US, there's quite a lot of people still living here,
Yeah.
Middle America, as they like to call it.
Middle America, yeah.
But yeah. I mean, that's kind of like... It's an interesting question to pose, what would things be like if something was removed and, if Britain wasn't here, what would the world be like,
Yeah. Let's read some of these points that one of the people on Quora made.
Yeah,
just quickly read through them. I think
so that would mean the British won the American Revolution. You know, if the U.S. didn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
They'd have punished the colonies, so the colonies would have been occupied. The British would have kept on trying to make the world British. The U.S. would not have developed the way it did. That could very well mean the French took a lot of the U.S.
Yeah.
That would probably be the Spanish. Technology advances would have slowed to a crawl. Mass production, individual freedom, and thinking would not have developed like it did. You can assume the First World War happened. The U.S. would still be in it, but as a UK country subject to UK control, the war would have been much bloodier. Because, they took a lot of soldiers from Canada over.
I think that it wouldn't have lasted as long, though. If we're assuming that there's still the same population size as now. I mean, if we had been British, yes, they would have sent a lot more people over. Would it have been bloodier? I don't know, because I think it would have been over sooner.
Maybe,
I mean, more people means, the other side being outnumbered. Yeah. You know what I mean?
The Panama Canal might not have been built without American drive and energy.
Huh,
I can see the British we don't need a canal through the... God, it's too much work, mate. It's too much work. Not worth it. The Communist Revolution would still have happened in Russia, so Lenin and Stalin would be a factor. Assuming that the Allies won World War I, they would have imposed harsher terms on Germany. The US and President Wilson tried to keep the peace terms sane.
Yeah,
because I think the British were all, ready to, stamp out Germany.
Yeah.
And Hitler would have still come into power. World War II would have still occurred. Japan would have not have the US to challenge their aggression. They might have taken most of the Far East. UK would still stand alone against Hitler, but with no US support.
But why would they have not had the US? Surrender. Because we're still here, right? Like, we're not imagining that the country as a physical doesn't exist. So
I mean, so I don't know if Britain had stood alone to Hitler and I wouldn't have had the US to support it. It means
we would have had everybody in Europe instead of going over to maybe. Yeah. Maybe Britain would have been like, oh no, we need to end this that's closer to where we live.
Yes.
Than worrying about what's happening over there. Yeah, maybe.
And it's like, the UK would still stand alone against Hitler, but with no US support, it might have had to surrender. Then Hitler could have turned his full attention to the USSR. How this would have turned out is anyone's guess. Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, It's interesting. Let us know what you guys think. Obviously, we're not historians. We might have gotten things wrong during this discussion, We're not historians, no. We don't have a PhD in historians.
Yeah.
History.
We don't have a PhD in historians.
Historianism.
Yeah, there you go. Proof. #proof.
Yes.
But let us know what you think the United States would be like without the UK, if the UK was not a country.
I think the worst, if the US wasn't a thing, I think the worst thing that would have been is we would not have cable TV today. So you would not be able to watch Bravo.
Why wouldn't we have cable TV?
It wouldn't be pretty. The chances are very good that we would not have cable TV today. This is what this guy says, and it's true. If there was no US, there would be no cable TV. There would be no Bravo. There would be no Vanderpump Rules.
Maybe there'd be no podcasts either.
Podcasts, and
these people wouldn't have to be tortured by listening to us
talking all the time. Just talking.
Oh my god! All right. Well, that was fun.
Yeah,
that was a fun, interesting thing to think about. Thank you guys so much as always for tuning in. We really appreciate your support. Special shout out and thank you to our patrons. And we'll talk to you guys next time.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.